Alright everyone, welcome back to another Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes video with Fat Phil, and we have an FAQ, and this FAQ is kind of designed for free-to-play, newer players, and give you guys some perspective on things that I do that not only I think have allowed me to progress faster, but allow me to be a more efficient free-to-play player. A lot of this game, I was thinking about this the other day about, you think of like professional athletes and what makes them a professional athlete, and there is a talent aspect. But what separates a guy like, for those of you, going back a few years, think of Wesley Sneijder and how good he was and what separated him from being on the level of Ronaldo. And it's about the little things that he did that Ronaldo does every single day that Wesley Sneijder was not doing. That's what I think it comes down to, that those guys at the top level all have the same amount of talent, and what separates the good ones from the great ones, from the all-timers, is the little things they do every single day. So here are 3 little things that you can do in your farming and in your roster that will progress you further, faster, and give you a more complete, not just roster, but complete experience of Galaxy of Heroes. So let's dive right in and give a huge shout out to my channel members. Thank you guys so much for your continued support. If you're interested in joining channel memberships, there's a link in the description down below. Otherwise, if you guys could please subscribe, that would help this channel so much. I really appreciate your guys' continued support. We're almost at 6,000 subscribers, which is just crazy to think of where this channel was a year ago. So thank you guys again. I love all you. Let's get into the video. So as I was kind of using, some professional athletes, it's those little things that add up over time. And so the first little thing that you can do is you can change your payout, and particularly to help you with modding. So I want to explain what I mean when I say change your payout. So if you go over here to your settings on the main screen, if you click on these settings and you go down to time settings, it tells you what your current time settings are for your squad arena rewards, your fleet arena, your championship, and then your daily activities reset. Your stores, the majority of your stores reset on a 6-hour refresh. That every 6 hours they refresh. So your daily activities, mine, reset at 10 o'clock. So that means at 4 a.m., 10 a.m., and 4 p.m., my stores are refreshing, right? 4 times a day. Now, why is that important that mine is 10 o'clock? Because that allows me to see my stores 4 times a day. That there is not a period of time that my stores, that I'm not awake for, that I'm not able to buy the gear from them. A really good example would be if my stuff was, say, like 12 o'clock, just for the sake of argument here. Look, so yeah, in my rewards, I'm going to get them, but I'm not going to be around for that 12 a.m. to 6 a.m. Like, I'm not going to be up in time, and I won't be awake, or I'll be asleep when that store refreshes. So I'm going to miss out on being able to buy things in the store at that time. So I moved it back to a time where I'm able to hit those stores 4 times a day. And you may think, oh, that's not a big deal, Phil. Like, the Cantina store and some of these other ones, like, they don't change, so it's not a big deal. But think about when you're trying to go for gear pieces and you get another chance every single day to see if they have the gear that you need or a character that you need. Think about that in your fleet arena. Right, and Fleet Arena is a little bit more difficult because this one doesn't quite refresh on the same stuff as everybody else. But like your Guild Event store, these refresh and doesn't have the character that you want, and you see it in extra time, and it does. And the biggest one, though, is your mods. Your mod store. Think about that. If you're able to see the store 4 times a day instead of 3, over the course of 3 days, you've seen an extra day's worth of mods comparative to the other person. You think of over the course of 100 days, the mods that you've seen will take another player. What is that? I've seen call it 400 mods. They're gonna need to spend 133 days to get even close, to get close to that number, right? Something like that. Math is not my strong suit, even though I'm an accountant. So you see more mods, and that allows you to get better mods over a longer period of time, and you think you extrapolate that over years, and that makes a massive difference to your account. So 1000%, guys, changing your payout, not only does it help you too, you think about it, if you have a contested payout and you move to a time that doesn't, but really where you want to have this is a place where you can hit the stores 4 times a day instead of 3. You'll see your mods increase, and you'll be able to see the stores more often to get the stuff that you need. So I do want to mention that is something that I do that I think is really, really important. Just getting you to see more mods is vital to this game. I will die on that hill that being able to see more mods will set you so much further ahead because it gives you a better chance of obtaining those mods. So the next thing I want to talk about is side projects. Now, what is a side project? Because I think a lot of times we get confused and we think that side projects are these things where you're throwing all kinds of gear at them. A side project is something that you're farming on the side with the intention that eventually you'll gear it up. It may not happen right away. Maybe you'll do it like with my Tuscans, where I threw a little bit of gear on them. I needed them for Conquest, and so I threw a little bit of gear on them, just enough that I was able to get through Conquest, some of those galactic challenges that came out, and it was a great side project. It probably paid its, in terms of Conquest stuff, definitely paved the way for me to be able to get stuff faster. So felt really, really good about getting these guys. But you notice I'm still farming my Tuscan Chieftain. My thought process here is if the Tuscans ever do get to a point where we need them for a legendary or a galactic legend or anything like that, I have them ready to go. If not, hey, I got some use out of them, but I want my hard node done. And just to kind of paint the picture of some other ones that I've done. So you think my Zori Bliss, she's a side farm. She's 1000% a side farm. Resistance Hero Finn started the same way, that I was kind of preparing for my next galactic legend of Rey before I was really gearing her up, that I was like, hey, I want to have these things done. And my Fennec Shand for Jabba the Hutt, I built her years before, I built her almost as soon as she became farmable. I started farming her because she looked really good, and I was never able to gear her up. And then boom, I got lucky and she was a Jabba requirement, and I had that done. And so that allowed me then to start farming Skiffguard Lando and Kors Light Leia that much sooner. And so while I was finishing, if you guys remember, I finished my Lord Vader farm and then I started working my way into Jabba. I was already farming Kors Light Leia and Skiffguard Lando in the middle of, towards the tail end of that Jabba farm as I finished up those characters. And so that's a side farm. Your side farm is not, this, I don't like when people think that it's, oh, I got to throw gear and relics on these characters. It's just preparing you for whatever you're going to do next, or preparing you for something down the road that could happen. I would recommend obviously, if you're a newer player, you're not going to have the luxury of being able to have a bunch of side farms. So what's going to be more valuable for you and your account is, as you're getting Galactic Legend 1 or as you're getting Thing 1, start working towards whatever you think you're going to do second. If you're following along in the Fat Phil farming guide, as you should be, because it's the greatest, even though, not biased. Say you're going for your Executor and you're wrapping some things up, start farming those characters you need for, say, Jedi Knight Luke or Old Republic or, whatever it is that you're farming next. Start building those things. Maybe as you finish up some of these things, you're like, hey, you know what? I'm going to start, going towards Jabba, and so I'm going to build the things that I need here. It's all about preparing for that next step. And even if you don't ever take it, like I show this all the time you think about, my armor has been at gear 8 for how long? I've had Omega favorited for how long? I've had Trench favorited for, since he's been a Conquest character. I haven't geared him up yet, but eventually I will. Maybe eventually I will make that leap. Other examples, just showing you guys some more ones, was my Iden Versio and Moff Gideon were both characters who I'd farmed up, didn't really know when I was going to fully gear them, and then by the time that I did, I feel really good about it. They've benefited my account greatly, but it was something that I worked on over a period of time, that they started as these side farms, just things I was doing. They didn't really match up with what I was farming at the current moment, but just with some shards that I'm building along the way. And so if you want my advice of what a really good side farm would be, it's something on a hard node. Obviously, these are two that I'm farming now, but it needs to be something on a hard node, something that isn't going to completely deter you or drain you of resources. I don't recommend Cantina farms as a side farm per se, because one, they don't take nearly as long as a hard node to farm. They just take away signal data. And signal data is something that is just so important to this game that you can only really sacrifice that signal data when you're building something that you need. That's just my 2 cents on the Cantina. But hard nodes, you think I'm spending 60 energy a day farming Seer Junda? That's not really, it's maybe a Kyrotech, maybe a Kyrotech and a half. So over a period of time, that could be a big deal. But for me to be able to get Seer faster and then start focusing on the rest of those characters that maybe we need them and I can earn stuff, over time or whatever, have a really good team, that's why side farms are important. It's not that you necessarily need to gear them right away and that you're done and, oh, I got to gear them. It just prepares you for the eventuality that you may need them, or gives you an option that I went and farmed Jedi Knight Luke and I've started building my Scout Trooper on the side. Hey, I've got an Imperial Trooper team. I can start doing that, So Think of your side farms as stuff that is going to prepare you for things down the road or your next farm. And then as you get to that next farm, you get other side projects, and the cycle continues and continues and continues. So that's something that has really propelled my account along, is that I'm not just always preparing for that next thing, but that I've built things that maybe I didn't need right away, and that down the road it did help me. And then finally, the last thing I get asked so much is when to stop gearing a team. And so I have my Iden Versio team here. And a couple of things come into play here. Number one is, what's your end goal of this team? If my goal with Iden Versio is to set her on defense and get holds, then I need this team to be Relic 7 and modded out of their minds. That would be the truth. I need this team to be crazy modded. But if I'm just trying to get some cheap wins on offense, you take this team in here just as is. You don't need to worry. Get them to that point where, hey, like I already had these characters geared up. Take them to gear levels that you feel comfortable with. That would be step one. Step two, then go test it out. Go do a week of GAC with a lower gear Iden team and see what you can do. If you're not getting wins, maybe tweak your strategy a little bit. If you're still not getting wins, hey, you know what? Maybe I need to invest some more gear in these characters to get something out of them. That's okay. But experiment with it a little bit and see how they're doing. I've had no troubles in my GACs with this team right here. They've done really, really well for me. Gotten a lot of really good wins, punched up, and it saved me teams on offense that I've been able to use elsewhere. So this was a really good example of a team that, hey, you know what? It's getting me wins. Similarly, my General Grievous droids, even with Gear 12, still manages to get me wins on offense, and I've punched up pretty well with this team. I've gone in, I've beat Starkiller teams with this, which is crazy enough. I actually have beat, by subbing, I sub-nuke Gunray in for Droideka. I have managed to beat Sith Eternal with this team before. I even beat an Iden Versio squad with this one time. That was probably the most impressive win they have under their, like, even more so than Sith Eternal, because they're like a soft counter to Sith Eternal. That Iden battle, General Grievous just kind of ended up carrying it, and that was probably one of the craziest ones I've pulled off. But again, I've tested it out. I know what their limitations are and where I can and can't use them. So this, again, is a team that I would love to gear these characters. I just don't have that luxury right now. And I've been able to they're still managing to do work for me, so I don't really feel the need to relic them just for the sake of the relics. That if I geared them up, they would get probably a little bit more consistent. Maybe I could use them for Starkiller more, but I think in the current state of the game, in my current account, this is, managing to get wins. Now, I compare that finally to these characters down here, where I've added extra relic levels to them than maybe what was necessary to get the team going. My Maul started out at Relic 5, and he was doing fine, and then I started noticing, particularly in my squad arena, when I would do a Lord Vader mirror match, that I wasn't doing nearly as much damage as my opponents were. My Maul was dying faster, and I was kind of getting like, man, if this is happening in squad arena, this is that much easier for people to do in GAC and Territory Wars. So I bumped my Maul up, and I did the same thing with my Royal Guard. They're only Relic 7, but they're at least a little bit thicker, and I've noticed results with them, that I've gotten more holds with that team on both Territory Wars and GAC because they're higher relics and they pose a bigger danger. So it was something that I learned over a period of time that, hey, at one point Relic 5 was doing fine, now I need them at a higher place. My Starkiller and Visas Mar was a similar situation where I kind of looked at them and said, if I need these characters, I need them at Relic 5 to take advantage of Datacrons, and I got them there, and they're still winning against Starkiller. They're still doing really, really well in GAC, so I don't feel that pressure to have to increase their relic levels yet, because they're still performing. If it gets to that point where Starkiller's getting less consistent against Rey, or I'm having difficulty beating teams, characters are dying, that's when I need to take that step back and say, hey, should I increase their relic levels? And let's say it's Visas Mar that's dying, just again, when should you stop gearing? I don't even have 6-thought mods on her. So your first step before I'd be like, man, do I need to get more gear on her? Or more higher relics? Should I just increase her mods? Should I put better mods on her? Like your Starkiller, is he modded to that point that you've managed to give him as much offense as humanly possible? Have you done everything you can to get him to that point you need? If so, maybe add that gear. And then the last example I'll use is my Dark Trooper at Relic 5, where, why did I stop at Relic 5? I stopped there because at the time that was what I could afford to do. I've managed to get wins. He's still doing really, really well. So I don't feel that pressure to take him beyond Relic 5 when he's still doing work here. If we get to that point where he's not performing up to par, he's not winning as much, then I need to make that decision of, hey, time to take him to Relic 7. And I find that's the best case scenario for a lot of players, is just experiment a little bit. Don't be afraid to go through a week of GAC with a lower gear team. If the first round they don't perform as you wanted them to, try a different team. And hey, you know what? Okay, a week. Big deal. But imagine that you go in and you're like, man, I need to relic my entire Iden Versio team. So you go and spend all these relics, and then they stomp a team. And you're like, wow, I could have done that with less gear. Think of the impact of what those relics could do for your account in other places. That a team like this is what's allowing me to get to Galactic Legends Leia faster, to get my Leviathan faster, is that I didn't have relics on characters that I didn't really need them on to get the desired results. So that's kind of when I say, like, when to stop gearing. There's not this, at this point, this is the point you stop gearing. A lot of it is going to just be your own judgment on what's your goal of that team. And that's kind of why I say, like, what's the difference? What's the goal? What are you trying to accomplish with that team? If you're trying to get your General Grievous team to beat Starkiller or beat Sith Eternal every single time you go up against them, you're going to want higher relics on them. You're going to want really good mods on them. But if your goal is just to kind of beat some random teams, I mean, this will work, right? You think of, like, this, if your goal is just to beat Mon Mothma, I mean, this works great, right? This works more than great. This works, fantastic. So just understand what your end goal is for that team, and then that'll kind of tell you when to stop gearing. And if experiment a little bit, it'll save you a lot of time and give you a lot better account, because you'll be able to put those relics into places that will make a much bigger difference. So that's the FAQ, guys. Again, I try to do these to give you perspective on what my account is and how it's come to be. I really appreciate all the support you guys have been giving this channel. You all are fantastic. Thank you again. Make sure you guys like and subscribe. Comment down below. I love all you. May the force be with you, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Cheers.